Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Central Region Advisory Council meeting. It is December 1st at 6 o'clock p.m. and I call this meeting to order. I have to read this statement about COVID-19 to everybody. Due to COVID-19 and the ability of the virus to spread from person to person, the governor has implemented a number of executive orders directed at controlling the spread of the virus by minimizing face-to-face interactions. Public gatherings are strongly discouraged by the CDC, state of Utah, and local health departments since they facilitate face-to-face contact and pose an elevated risk of virus transmission. The DWR and the chair of this public body have determined that public gathering at Regional Advisory Council and Wildlife Board meetings presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who attend and will conduct this meeting using a fully electronic format. This meeting format is authorized by a recent amendment to Utah Code and executive order by Utah Governor Gary Herbert and will be temporarily used in place of the in-person public meetings that usually occur around the state. Anyone wishing to comment on agenda topics in future meetings or to observe this meeting may do so by logging into the division's website where instructions and links are provided. I'd like to welcome all the public that are watching and the RAC members that are in attendance, and we'll start with a roll call to see who's here. AJ Maurer.
Here.
Ben Lauder.
Here.
Chris Schmitz. She said she might not be able to be here. She has a family member that's struggling with COVID. Danny Potts.
Yeah, I'm here.
Eric Reed.
Yep, here.
Jake Steele. Josh Leonard.
Present.
Ken Strong.
I'm present.
Luke Decker.
Here.
Mike Christensen.
Here.
Scott Jensen. Oh, Scott's away on a anniversary retreat, I believe. Steve Lund. Okay, we definitely have a quorum and we can move on. We would like to welcome DWR staff, Jason Vernon from the Central Region. I know that the new wildlife manager, Rusty Robinson's on the call as well. And we'd also like to especially welcome Darren DeBloois, who is the mammal coordinator. Number 5 on my list is to call for an approval of the agenda and past minutes. I have had a request that we add number 6 to the agenda, another item to discuss the RAC agendas, why some trying to level out how many topics we cover during the various RAC meetings so that we don't have like last time, which was very full, and this time where we only have one agenda item. So I would like to maybe entertain a motion to add that agenda item if people are interested in it.
The Ken Strong here. I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to add an agenda item to the agenda, and then we'll approve the agenda. I'll call for a vote. AJ Maurer.
Yes.
So a vote of yes means to add the agenda item.
Correct.
Ben Lauder.
Yes.
Danny Potts.
Yeah.
Eric Reed.
Yes.
Josh Leonard.
Yes.
Ken Strong.
Yes.
Luke Decker.
Yes.
Mike Christensen.
Yes.
Okay, now I would entertain a motion to accept the revised agenda and approve the minutes.
So moved.
Seconded.
Who seconded it? Ken?
Ken.
Okay. We'll call for a vote. AJ.
Yes.
Ben.
Yes.
Danny.
Yeah.
Eric,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Ken Strong,
Yes.
Luke,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Have Chris Schmitz, Jake Still, Scott Jensen, or Steve Lund joined? Excellent. Thank you. We will go to number 3 on the agenda, which says a wildlife board meeting update. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, the wildlife board meeting is not until this Thursday, so there is not a wildlife board update. I guess I'll provide 2 wildlife board updates at the next meeting. The next item on the agenda is I'll turn the time over to Jason Vernon for a regional update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, RAC members. Good to have you here tonight and see you. Appreciate your time and efforts on this committee. I just have a couple of things. It seems like we met pretty recently, so I don't have a lot to update. As Brock mentioned earlier, we do have a new regional wildlife manager, and that's Rusty Robinson. He accepted the position. We're super excited to have him in the region. He's been in the region for several years now as a district biologist as well as assistant regional manager. You'll probably recall he also spent some time in Salt Lake as the bighorn sheep and mountain goat biologist. So I feel really fortunate to have him in the region and filling in behind Riley there. And we have a really strong team in the region. He's going to continue to make that a great staff there. So when you have a chance, welcome Rusty into that position. One other thing with wildlife, we'll be conducting bighorn sheep flights over the next week or 2 throughout the region, and we're gearing up for deer captures as well. So if you have interest in deer captures, we're trying to keep the numbers low because of COVID. But let me know if you have interest, and we'll see what we can do, RAC members. And just one last thing from our habitat section. If you live in or if you've been traveling through the Provo or Orem area the last couple of days, you've probably seen or heard a helicopter buzzing Mount Timpanogos there. That's our reseeding effort on the range fire. That's the last fire we have in the region, the wildfire that needed to be reseeded. We've reseeded 10 wildfires in the region this year, and today was the last day of flight. So our habitat staff's been extremely busy getting those fires reseeded, hopefully just in time for some snow to fly here coming up soon. And with that, that's all I have for updates, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions from the RAC members.
Thank you, Jason. Does anybody have a question for Jason?
Yes, Jason, Ken Strong here. Are any of those captures going to be taking place in the central region?
Yeah, we do have a couple of captures on the Manti that will be taking place, or Wasatch maybe. Rusty, maybe you better answer that one.
Yeah, Ken, we've got captures on the Wasatch, the Manti, and we'll do some captures out west too, the Ochre Stansburys and places like that.
Okay, thanks. I would like to be involved in that if possible.
We'll keep you in the loop, Ken.
Okay, any other questions for Jason? I know that captures are well on their way. I don't remember the exact number. I think they caught 39 does and fawns on the cache, and they're working on the south slope right now of the UNS. So the next item on the agenda is number 5, the Black Bear Rule Amendments and Recommendations. We're going to boom right through this agenda. Before I turn the time over to Jason to summarize the comments, I've written down the 3 proposed changes. I've summarized those. The first one is if a unit is placed under predator management plan, the unit will be placed in the liberal management strategy automatically. The second change to the bear plan is if units are in predator management, they would not count toward the 25% maximum percentage of units allowed in the liberal management strategy. They have to go to that liberal management strategy based on the House bill that passed during the last session. And the third change would be if the unit is in predator management, that units in predator management not be included in the statewide roll-up to meet the overall moderate harvest strategy. And so with those three proposed changes, I'll turn the time over to Jason to summarize the public comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. We had 4 comments come in from the public through the Central Region. 3 of them were opposed to the recommendations and 1 was in support of the recommendations.
Thank you, Jason. I will summarize those comments as well. 1 was a comment that said, I didn't understand what Darren presented, so I'm opposed. 1 was, I'm opposed to killing one animal to benefit another animal. And 1 was opposed to increasing, putting bears in predator management without proof that bears are the problem. Okay. Any questions from the RAC for Darren?
Yeah, Darren, I got one. We've been doing studies on this for a while, so it's pretty well documented. The bears are pretty well documented as to what they've been doing and destroying the game. Am I correct?
I think the biggest risk that bears pose would be to newly born fawns. And we do have some data on the book cliffs that shows that bears do key in on those. So we don't see a lot of bear mortality to adult animals, but we are looking right now at the possibility of bears stealing mountain lion kills and causing those lions to have to kill more often. That's still, the jury's still out on that one. We're still conducting that study. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Thanks much.
I will add, Ken, that that's not true on every unit. So definitely there's evidence on the book cliffs that bears have an effect on fawns. We have no evidence for that, for example, on the cache.
Yeah, you'd have to have a fairly high bear density to begin with. And then the other things we'd look at would be adult health, adult animal health, doe health. If they're healthy, but they're not pulling off a lot of, an acceptable amount of fawns in the fall, that may be some indication that they're losing those fawns early on. And on the book cliffs, we've seen that bears contribute to that. So, but we don't have that data on all our units, but those are some of the things we'd look at when we make the decision.
Well, I know that in the past, they've had some trouble at Hobble Creek Golf Course. Even with the golfers out on the course, they've had bears come out and take fawns right in front of the golfers. So I knew that was taking place there.
They definitely eat fawns. Yep.
To play off that, Darren, if you find that bears are killing the fawns at a higher rate, do you propose killing more bears in the spring, or is it just kind of over the whole year and hopefully that takes effect the following spring with that impact?
Yeah, liberal harvest would increase permits across all the seasons. And so the biologists do have some flexibility in where they put those permits. So there's an overall percentage increase, and they could usually, what we would do is look and see what's the season with the most success and try to put the pressure on then. But liberal harvest is designed to cause a 10 to 20% reduction in bear densities. And that's why that's the tool we'd use if we need it.
Thank you, Darren. Other questions for Darren?
Darren, I had a question. So if I understood it right from your video, the proposed changes are to bring, and I'm going to get the verbiage wrong, but to bring the wildlife rule in accordance with Utah legislative code. So can you talk about a little bit more about the legislative action that was taken that this change would address and speak to?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that happened last year. The first is the legislature proposed bill, House Bill 125, which is now the state code. It passed. And that requires the division whenever we detect or determine that predators are preventing a mule deer herd from reaching its management objectives, that the director take action to reduce predator densities. The second thing we did is we rewrote our predator management policy in light of that legislation to define what we would do, and we have different prescriptions depending on the predator. So cougars, we did this summer where we have many units that became unlimited quota, and basically we're hitting those units hard in the short term to try to reduce densities. For bears, the prescription is to put it into a liberal strategy. So what this is doing tonight is we needed to address this in the plan. The plan didn't anticipate this, obviously, so we need to make sure the plan aligns with the reality now of the legislation and the policy, and that's what these changes do.
Thanks, that was helpful. And I guess the part B to that question would be, does the RAC, or even the Wildlife Board for that matter, have the recourse or the wherewithal to not vote in support of these amendments? I'm trying to understand what our role is in this, because it seems like if it comes from the legislature, we have to fall in line with that. What other alternative recourse is there other than what's been proposed?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, this is bookkeeping, because code trumps everything. When the legislature passes a law, then we need to follow it, and so that's the thing that trumps it all. Now we did pass policy, which is a division vehicle, but we did that, if you recall, this summer, and that went through the RACs and the board approved it. So really, this is kind of we need to make some changes to the plan, and we need to have, I guess, notify the public those changes are being made, but it really is kind of a housekeeping step at the end of the day.
Any other questions for Darren? Okay, discussion among the RAC members.
This is Potts. You hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Hey, so if this is merely a housekeeping thing, as was suggested, then why are we voting?
Because it's a change to the management plan, and so technically, to change a management plan, it has to go through a public process, Danny.
That's good. And so this will go on up to the Wildlife Board, and they'll deal with it, right?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Did I say anything wrong there, Darren?
No, that's right, Brock. I mean, I guess theoretically someone could raise some concerns with the specific things we're recommending, or maybe offer some alternatives that would still fulfill the code, but really it's a formality as well.
Any other discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve as presented.
And this Ken, I'll second that.
Okay, I'm writing down. Ben made a motion that we approve as presented. Ken Strong seconded. We have a motion on the table to approve. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. AJ Maurer.
Yes.
Ben Louder.
Yes.
Danny Potts.
No.
Eric Reed.
Yes.
Jake Steele. Not here. Josh Leonard.
I'm going to vote no, and I want to explain after the vote's called why.
So I would like to hear that from you and from Danny too. Okay, Ken Strong.
Yes.
Luke Decker.
No.
Mike Christensen.
Yes.
Okay. The vote passes 5-3. Josh, you want to provide some input that I could bring to the board?
Yeah, and I think Scott did a really great job last RAC of pointing out the importance of of why a dissenting vote occurs. I think when wildlife management occurs from a legislative process and not through the RAC process, it really hijacks the public participation. I also think it hijacks the science just by, going against the management plan that had been vetted by a committee for a long period of time, and to change that in the third year of a 3-year cycle for a bill that half of the legislators on the Hill probably had no idea of what it even meant at the time. I think that movement is dangerous, and that we should be wary of legislative action to manage wildlife populations, especially predators, because it's such a political contentious issue. So there's no way I could support this.
Okay, perfect. I've got that written down. Danny, do you want to add anything?
Man, that was a great summary. You blew me out of the water, Joe. Okay, so anyway, I don't have anything other to add than that most of my constituency and myself, we didn't vote. We didn't vote for that ridiculous addition to the U.S. or to the Utah Constitution. It wasn't even well written, and the title wasn't even good. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Luke, do you have anything to add?
No, the only addition I would make is, having it in there as a blanket management plan, lumping it in with all predators and just making it a blanket thing. I think it needs to be more refined, the specific unit, as those decisions are made.
Okay. I'm just writing down some notes. That brings us to agenda item 6, other business. I'm not sure where we want to start with this. What I've heard is it would sure be nice to have a little less on some meetings and a little more at other meetings, so that we don't spend 5 hours to not thoroughly discuss it one night and we spend 23 minutes to complete the agenda on another night.
Yeah, Brock, that's pretty much sums it up. I don't know how to address it, but I have heard from other RAC and board members that this might be a drinking from a fire hose one night and drinking from a tiny cup the next. So I know that they used to have 12 meetings a year, and I don't think we want more meetings. I just think we could be more efficient if we put information that's not pertinent to a deadline into other RAC meetings, like the deer management plans and things like that. But
this is Ken.
So,
We could have done the same thing maybe last month. I don't know if there's a deadline as to when they need the duck issues in, but that would have been something that would have taken an hour out of that meeting and put it in this one. So I think it needs to be leveled out as much as possible. But I know there are deadlines they have to meet.
yeah, I was about to say the same thing. I know the waterfowl used to be in September, I believe, and then it got moved to with the big game, and I don't recall the reason why. There was some timing issue, but I mean, if we're talking about waterfowl now, I mean, that's obviously for next year. I don't see, unless somebody can give me a reason, I don't see any reason why we couldn't punt the waterfowl to this meeting, because our November meeting, the big game meeting, is always the biggest meeting. And probably our second biggest meeting is the April meeting, and we're talking about numbers. So anything we can do to limit those two meetings to just the core stuff of, big game and numbers related, push anything else out to other meetings around them.
yeah, well said. I just think that it does a disservice to the public and to the process if we have so much information that we can't even discuss it all. I mean, I think Brock did a great job last meeting, and we did our best. But I mean, look at all the issues that got overlooked, that the public presented, and I don't know how to go about that. I just hope that having this discussion can put it on the radar of whoever puts that meeting plan together.
Is there anybody here from DWR that has any perspective as to why the waterfowl got moved to the November meeting? No.
I don't, and I can certainly look into that and obviously share this discussion with our leadership. I wish I had some answers for you, Ben. I just don't right now.
Sure, that's fine.
So, I mean, I completely agree with you. The more we can focus on what has to be done in that meeting, the better. And so if we don't have to do waterfowl that meeting, and I don't see why, because you're right, Ben, it's not happening for another year. That would have saved an hour. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there is a lot of stuff that gets lumped in with big game. We're talking, sometimes the management plans get put there, and whether those should be a part of that meeting or a different meeting, I don't know. But then you've got, rules and changes for the guidebook, and then you got CWMUs and landowner stuff. And I don't know that a lot of that stuff can be broken up, but obviously the waterfowl just doesn't fit with the rest of it.
Yeah. And I completely agree with that. That's a great point. And we're going to hear management plans for, each deer unit from each region. We're going to hear from, all the other species. And if those aren't changed and they don't impact the permit numbers or the process we're talking about, it feels like they could be moved around a little bit. But that's just my opinion, and I don't walk in their shoes. So.
Well, and here's another thought as far as like those the plans. And I don't know that I'd go this far with the big plans, like the 5 and the 7 year plans. But when we're talking like unit plans, is there any reason that we couldn't do those at the September meeting? Because that's usually pretty light meeting. It's fishing, right? And that way, if they did affect anything in the November meeting, they're still done beforehand.
I think they're all good suggestions. I don't know if we want to have an action item here where we make a motion to ask the board to do something, or if we just say, Jason, you've got this all to take back and let people know. How do you want to proceed?
Well, I think just by us having the discussion, it puts it more on the radar. I think having Jason be our liaison with the decision makers, that would be a good route. That's just my personal opinion.
And I'm glad to do that. That's not a problem at all. I'm glad to go whichever way the committee would like, but I'm certainly glad to be the liaison there as well.
Question for Brock and or Jason: like, do we need to take a vote on or make a recommendation to? I mean, if we did that, then the board would discuss it, right? I'm just concerned if we don't, does it get discussed?
I would say that this is something that's been on our radar in the past. It's a little bit different now because our public discussion is different. I know we've had long RAC meetings when we've had in-person meetings as well. And, there is some fatigue in those meetings, I think. And I certainly hear what you're talking about. We've had these discussions internally before. And I'm certainly glad to discuss it with them and further and come up with some type of response and recommendation. If that pleases you, if not, then we could certainly do an action item and ask the board to direct us to do it. But I'm I certainly think our staff understands and hears what you're saying. It's something that's come up after the last meeting as well, and not only discussed in this meeting. It's been identified before. So however you'd like to proceed.
As a matter of housekeeping, can we make an action item on a agenda that wasn't made public before the meeting started?
So we've regularly made recommendations to the board that were not on the agenda, like asking Wyoming to match our reciprocity agreement on Flaming Gorge, stuff like that. So I think we could make a recommendation to the board. I mean, I trust Jason, but maybe that would force the board to discuss it if we did a recommendation.
It's probably not a bad idea because I don't know if we have any wildlife board members on tonight, do we?
I did
I
not
don't believe we do.
So I'd entertain a motion for a recommendation if you think that's a good idea. I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't know that I think it's going to be addressed either way.
So moved by Ken.
Ken Strong, do we have a second?
I'll second that, Mike.
Mike, okay. So the
What was the
recommendation
motion?
would be to ask the board to recommend to the board that they ask the division to look into rearranging the RAC schedule so the meetings are more even, something like that. As even as possible.
Mr. Chair, I did just get an email from Blair, if you'd like me to read through that as far as the waterfowl recommendations of the RAC.
You bet. I'd love to hear it.
Please.
All right, I'll read what he just sent me. He says the waterfowl meeting used to be in July, but was moved to the fall because of timing with the feds process. Waterfowl recs have to occur after October and before April. So it really only leaves the November and December RACs. We decided on the November RAC because he had some prior flyway meetings in December. So we could probably move the RAC meeting for waterfowl into December in the future.
So very good. So it sounds like we can at least do something. We have a motion on the table to recommend to the board that they look at the RAC schedule or the agenda of the RAC schedules so that they aren't so uneven. Any other discussion on that? I'm writing down the motion. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. AJ?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Danny Potts?
Yes.
Eric Reed?
Yes.
Josh Leonard?
Yes.
Ken Strong?
Yes.
Luke Decker?
Yes.
Mike Christensen?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Is there anything else anybody wants to bring up? I don't know. I'm hesitant to bring it up. I received a copy of a letter today from the Houndsman Association asking, it was to the Wildlife Board, asking them to lengthen the spring pursuit season. I'm bringing it up because personally, I'm against the proposal. They want to extend the spring pursuit season to June 10th. And the reason I'm against the proposal, and I kind of wanted it on the minutes, is that fawns are starting to hit the ground well before that. And I don't know that it's a good idea to have dogs pursuing animals when deer and elk are fawning and calving. But I just wanted to get it on the record that I'm personally against that.
Well,
So,
this is Ken.
Brock,
I think
Let's go Ken first and then Ben.
yep.
so. I think I'd be against it for sure.
Okay, Ben?
Yeah, Brock, I didn't see that. I'm just curious what, like that didn't come into, I didn't miss anything, right? That didn't come into the RAC emails or?
It did not come into anybody's email. I got it sent to me secondhand, but it was addressed to the Wildlife Board by Corey Huntsman and the Utah Houndsman Association directly. It did not go to any of the RACs. I just saw it secondhand.
Interesting. Okay.
And so it did mention that you and Corey and Byron had a meeting to discuss this.
Yeah, we did. Yep. And we did. We discussed this very option as well as some other options. And where I didn't see anything addressed to the RAC or in the public comments, I assumed that they were not moving forward with it. Guess I'm out of the loop on that.
Well, I guess all the RACs are. I just wanted to on the record that I'm against it. I think there's real and it should go through the public process for any change like that.
Brock, I agree.
Yeah,
it has to go through a public.
Yep, I agree too. That should, if they're going to pursue that, then it should absolutely go before the RACs. Yeah, I don't understand why they sent that to the board and not to the RACs.
Perfect. I have no other agenda items. Does somebody else have something they want to discuss? Mike, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that I agreed with you on your stance of not having hounds running during fawning and calving season.
So I mean, and that's kind of a knee-jerk reaction to just seeing it. I mean, I think if it went through the public process and it was vetted and we had all the stakeholders in the room and they came up with that recommendation, I probably personally wouldn't feel different, but if it had broad support, I might vote different. And so.
What's the current end of the pursuit date?
I think it's May 31st. They're asking for a 10-day extension, I think.
That's correct.
All I know is if my dog runs over a fawn, it's trouble. And if it's a bunch of dogs, hello.
So, any other comments? Boy, 38-minute meeting. I don't have anything else. So if I don't hear anything else, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Brock, do you want to do a trial run? We can do the waterfowl thing again just to see how it goes as part of this meeting.
Jeez. Blair was on.
Thank you. I really appreciate all you members taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. And even though the agenda wasn't long, I still think we do important things, and I appreciate it. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Brock.
Yep.
Later.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.